pianist, DJ or producer looking to write better music? Is your latest track missing something? If you've already written a chord progression and don't know how to get those chords sounding great, then keep watching. Hi, I'm Toni Crichton and welcome to Tonic, the starting point of all things music. In my first video, I chatted with DEANFUEL, a DJ, producer who's got his own music label, has been rocking audiences for years and is producing his own tracks. Part of his musical journey was taking some piano lessons with me, and we had a look at how learning chords and how to work out a single progression enabled him to find a new way of writing a track. Today, we're going to take that chord progression and show you what you can do with 4 simple chords to make them sound even better. If you didn't catch the first video on how to write a chord progression, find it in the link below. Otherwise, stay tuned. We're going to take you step by step through 3 simple steps that will help you make a simple chord progression sound even better musically. It's easier than you think. If you're keen to join us today, please give us a like and please press the notification so that you're in the loop with all our upcoming tips for producers. Let's dive right in. You've got a chord progression as the basis for a track, but now you need to figure out what to do with those chords to make a great track. Here are 3 simple steps on how to voice those chords, and then Dean is going to show you how he arranged those chords, adding in different musical elements, which ultimately led to his track, Loving Me Wrong. Step 1. This first chord may not need too much manipulation, depending on what layers and sounds you'll be adding to it. But things to consider here are adding additional notes to your simple 1-3-5 to give the chord more depth and interest. In my first video on how to write a chord progression, I explained how a scale shows us how certain notes create tension or stability. So check that video out if you haven't already. We could add the 2nd or the 7th, that nice jazz sounding chord, or the 9th to add some tension. Otherwise, leave the chord in its simple form and come back to it once you've seen where it's going. Step 2. How to transition from your first chord to the next chord. Now, we could just move your hand on the piano to play the next 3 notes, but something called voicing helps us find a way for the smoothest possible transition, and this has a great impact on the sound you're going to create. Instead of playing the notes as they are, have a look and see what notes you have in common. Now, instead of playing the next chord as it's written in root position, leave any notes that are already there and just change the one that is new. This means you're still playing the correct chord, but you've changed the inversion. So for instance, in my example, I went from the tonic chord 1, A, C, E, to the median chord 3, C, E, G. But instead of moving my hand up so that C was my bottom note, I can keep the C and E where they are and literally just drop the one note, A to G. What a smooth transition and a completely different effect. Have a listen to the difference in sound. Step 3. We take that same principle and use it on your next chord. So just keep all the common notes in exactly the same position and only change the notes that are not staying the same. The idea is then to just play around with that until you find a sound that you really like. Perhaps you would have added in additional notes, or perhaps you only add in the extra notes after you've established a good transition using the voicing. But this approach should give you a sound that is cohesive and doesn't have you randomly jumping all over your keyboard. And it's actually also much easier to play. That's it, 3 steps to voice your chords. Now that's just the start, because you need to take these chords and turn them into your track. So for this, we'll jump onto the screen and join Dean so he can talk you through what he did for his 4 chords as the basis for his track, Loving Me Wrong.
Right. Hey, Toni. Thank you very much for joining me back in my studio.
Good to be back.
Yeah. Feels like it's been a while, even though it hasn't. But yeah, I just wanted to obviously recap from where we last left off, talking about writing a track, music theory. And obviously the way that I used to do it as a DJ producer was to mostly start with the drums, start with the kick drum, start with the percussion, and then I would basically try by trial and error to get a great sounding bass line, use that, and then try write the musical parts on top of that, which was a lot of trial and error, to be very honest, and could take a lot longer than I would want sometimes for music, and often leave me with stuff that just didn't sound musical at all. And obviously a few years back, I quickly worked out that if I wanted my music to sound better, a key thing was, to actually learn the theory and actually practice an instrument, which of course led me to you. And then, specifically with Loving Me Wrong, which is the track that we've been looking at, what I did differently here was to take one of the lessons that we'd started with, which was using chords to write a track.
Yes.
And, you can see here, obviously, that's what I did. I started with this piano part, which was pretty much as simple as a preset in Ableton, which you can hear here. You can just choose how you want it to sound. And
Brilliant.
I was like, well, I want a piano, cool, grand piano, done. And, I started off by putting in the most simple chord that I could think of, which was an ACE. And building it from there.
And so in terms of your voicing, you had your tonic chord, ACE. You did add in some extra frequency ranges, which you're going to talk about a little bit later. But in terms of the voicing that we've just spoken about in this video, you'll see that Dean did keep so many notes the same. And basically the only ones that she changed was the bass, which is great.
Yeah.
So in terms of the flow, you weren't moving around all over the keyboard the whole time. You were staying really close together, which gives a great cohesive sound.
Yeah, and obviously for me, without it being too much trial and error, I did want to keep it as simple as possible. So, focused on those main notes, and then, then worked on the bass line notes, which went from A to F to D to E, which pretty much sounds like this. That you've got your, well, it wasn't that A, sorry. It was the lower A down to your F, D, and then back to A. So that really became the baseline of the track. So I think when it comes to voicing and layering and all of those extra elements, once I was happy with the piano part, which sounded like this. Excuse the other sounds there.
There you go. Nice simple chords.
4 chords.
Not moving around too much. Bringing in your leading notes, taking you back to your tonic. And this was the start.
That was it. That was the foundation.
Yeah, today what we want to show everybody out there is what to do with these simple chords to turn them into a track.
Okay, so once I was happy with the piano part and I had the chords down, I then thought to myself, well, let me add a pad part in, which was, again, just keeping things very, very simple. I used the string part, which came out of Complete Control, which will be basically using a native instrument preset instead of Ableton's. But again, Ableton will have plenty of these themselves. It's just a simple string ensemble. And there, to keep things simple, I just used the bass notes. The
Fantastic.
A, the F, the D, and the E.
And had you used a whole chord, it would have been completely muddy, too much frequency, just too much sound. And this is good. You've got to remember to keep things simple, strip them right down to the basics.
Yeah, so here it was just single notes. And you can hear that, playing the string parts. I'm going to turn it up a little bit more. That, when you add it to the piano part, sounds like this. Just added a little bit of extra tension, filled up the frequency a bit better. The next step, of course, bass line. And guess what? The bass line is again
Same notes.
Following the exact same bass note. So, really nothing complicated. But putting all these parts together added to the overall sound of the track.
From
the musical
what you've
component.
already got, which is great. So you're not having to bring in new elements, you're using what you've got and you're adding to it.
It's about having that solid foundation and everything else builds on top of that.
Totally.
One of the last parts just to go through here for this was that I added in a quick last string part, which was just to add some extra. For me, I felt it was tension, but basically if you look at the note, it's the A note, which in this case, looking at the chords, it's the tonic note.
Yeah, it's your home note, which is great. But you've got it on a frequency range which is different to where you've been in your lower sounds. So it's at higher pitch, which is just giving you some variation, but not taking you out of key, which is great.
So if you add this into the pianos, the pads, and the bass, there you go. All the music for the entire track. And that's basically it. From there, I then went and started building the drums, finding other samples, other melody ideas or voice samples or whatever it was. And I mean, just a quick little preview of how that sounds is right here. But all of that came from that.
4 chords. And what's amazing here, you didn't even necessarily need to write a melody. You used a sample track. And so what we can go into next is how to write a melody if you are not wanting to use samples, so that somebody can then add in a complete melody. How does one come up with a melody to put over your 4 chords? And if that's not where you want to go, you bring in a sample and it works brilliantly too.
I mean, I think that's the beauty with especially like dance music or electronic music, or even, you know, a lot of modern pop music, is you can follow the theoretical rules. It gives you that foundation. And from there, you can really interpret it how you want to, whether it's using a voice sample or coming up with another melody lead. There's a lot of options.
And that's it. What to do with your musical chord progression to make a great sounding track. If you're still keen to dive a little deeper into how to use the scale of your key to write a good melody, then catch us again, and we will share some tips on how to write a great melody. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit the notification button for all the latest updates as they come. Join us on Instagram, find us on our website, and sign up for my piano courses. Links to all our social platforms are in the description below, and we look forward to hearing from you. If you're serious about using the piano to help your producing, then click on the link to my Piano 101 for producers. I'll be thrilled to get you playing. Thanks for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.